Carrie Jankowski, and I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm here to talk with you about simplifying self-care. Self-care is one of those buzzwords in our society, and sometimes we don't quite understand what it means to take care of ourselves. And so we're going to explore that today during our time together of this presentation. So, what is self-care, you ask? Well, to each person it means something a little bit different. So to some people, it might mean hanging out with your friends and watching the ball game. To other people, it might mean getting a massage and having some time at the spa. To others, it could mean going out on a run in solitude, having some quiet time in nature. And to others, they might enjoy spending some self-care time with their pets. Dogs or cats love our self-care time. So let's look at the definition of self-care as we start to understand what it means. The Oxford Dictionary tells us that it is the practice of taking an active role in protecting one's own well-being and happiness, in particular during periods of stress. Now, we all know that there is stress in life. There's positive stress and there's negative stress, but how we respond to that stress is what determines the status of our mental health. So, here's another definition to also explore where it talks about taking part in self-care actions are intentional acts to reduce physical, psychological, and behavioral negative outcomes that are a result of stressors. Now, I want to pay close attention to the second part of this definition where it talks about strengthening habits that build one's capacity to handle future stress. We know we're going to have stress in life. That is a given. It is how do we handle that stress that makes all the difference. So, in short, self-care is to take good care of our current selves as well as our future selves. So why is self-care important? Well, as I mentioned a moment ago, we're always going to have stress in our life. So we have to learn how to manage it in the most proper way to help keep ourselves in a good place throughout our lifetime. We also don't want to get to the point of overstress or stress burnout or experience compassion fatigue where we give and we give and we give until we're empty. Sometimes when we have stress burnout or compassion fatigue, we can see those symptoms in many aspects of our life. You know, some of the psychological symptoms might be anxiety or avoidance. Perhaps we're over-aroused, hyper-aroused, or even experience depression. We also want to be aware that stress burnout and compassion fatigue can impact our cognitive self, our mind. It affects our memory. We might have a hard time concentrating. We might show poor judgment or have intrusive thoughts that we can't really control, or maybe a lack of compassion for others. There's also an impact on our behavioral selves, right? We might display poor nutrition or poor sleep habits. We might not want to exercise. We might take part in some substance abuse, which might lead into addiction. We also might experience suicidality, perhaps difficulty in relationships when we are experiencing these high levels of stress burnout or compassion fatigue. We also can feel it in our bodies and our physical symptoms. We might have a really tight jaw, or our blood pressure might read as high. We'll have tense shoulders. We'll be tired all the time. Our pulse might race. We might have stomach issues, or maybe we're getting sick frequently. All of those symptoms are pointing towards high levels of stress, and so that is why we want to talk about self-care so that we can help to reduce some of those effects. Now, in the study by Smith et al. In 2017, they distinguished the difference between stress reactions and burnout. Now, again, we know we have stress, but when we get to the point of elevated stress, where we start to see over-engagement and anxiety, we might have a loss of energy, and we might be overreactive to things. We know those can be tied to current pressures, right? The things in the here and now that make us feel stressed. We also know that the impact from that can be sometimes temporary, can be physical in its damage. But when that extends beyond the boundary to a longer amount of time of feeling stressed, that reaction goes into the stage of burnout. And that is a gradual process over time. We get really disengaged. We have no motivation. We feel drained all the time. Our emotions can actually feel blunted, like we can't really feel. We feel numb. We might have a cynical attitude, be resentful in some of our thoughts, and have a negative perspective. The primary damage to that burnout can be mostly emotional because sometimes we just check out. So we want to be aware of what those symptoms can look like between acute stress and prolonged stress leading to burnout, so that again we can prevent those things from happening. So sometimes we look to the wisdom of others when we want to make changes in our behavior. And there is a study in 2017 of emergency department nurses. You know, nurses experience very high levels of stress, and they're also more prone to high levels of burnout and compassion fatigue. What we learned from that study is that by practicing debriefing or processing, or in layman's terms, just talking about what's going on in our lives and how we're handling that stress, that can actually result in higher levels of resiliency. It can reduce our compassion fatigue and increase our compassion satisfaction. That's great wisdom that we can learn from those emergency department nurses as we think about how can we build resiliency in our own lives. So when we look at the definition of resilience, if that's one of the things we're working towards, the definition states it is the capacity to recover quickly from difficulties, toughness, okay? So if we're thinking about how stress impacts us, if we can recover quickly from those stressful times and develop a mental toughness, that is going to help our overall health and well-being. So let's set a goal together. Let's set a goal of developing knowledge and skills that can be used in future situations to build resilience. That's the purpose of our talk today. So which parts of us are impacted by healthy self-care? So when we take care of ourselves and build that resilience within, all of these 8 dimensions will benefit. Our emotional self, our spiritual self, our intellectual self, and so on. Around the circle we go. All of those aspects are intertwined, and they make up who we are and how we operate in a daily life. Positive impacts of caring for ourselves and those 8 dimensions can be monumental. We know that life is a journey and it's not a destination. It is the process of getting there and making changes and experiencing life on a day-to-day basis. Every day we have an opportunity to make different choices. We also know that when everyone is unique and our interests are going to vary, what we see one person doing to take care of themselves well may not apply for us. We might want to try something different, and that's what makes us all unique and special. And if we find that we're doing something in our lives that isn't working to reduce that feelings of stress, why do we keep doing it? Let's change it and find some new solutions that will speak to those different life circumstances and help us to feel more successful in our well-being. We also want to develop a consistency pattern of focusing on our self-care. We know that we can't set out to run a marathon in one decision, right? We don't go from mile 0 to mile 26.2 in one action. It takes time and training and dedication and consistency to get there, to develop those good habits that will help our body and our minds to be able to respond to the stressors well. We also want to come up with our plan, maybe a short-term plan that's for the here and now, always building towards that long-term plan of health and wellness. So whatever that plan is going to look like for you, we know that it will not only impact you, but it's also going to impact the world around you. It could potentially positively impact your family or your support system. It could also positively impact your community at all levels, the local, the state, the national, the global level. You are making a difference in this world that you live in. What are you modeling for the people around you? How are you modeling positive self-care and resilience in your daily life? Also, what is the legacy that you are actively imprinting upon those around you? Whether those are friends who are watching you live your daily life, or perhaps grandchildren who are looking to you in a mentor role. What are the things that they're learning from how you live your daily life? So, here's our charge. We are going to redefine your self-care and your resilience. And we're going to look at 3 different domains when we're doing that, when we're setting that plan together. We're going to look at the mind, we're going to look at the body, and we're going to look at the spirit. And as you look at these ideas and these pieces of information, think about which ones of these could you apply to your life? Which ones are meaningful to you and help you to find purpose? So when we look at the mind, here are some examples of some things that you could do to take care of your mind. Mindfulness, meditation, involving yourself in counseling or therapy. Go back to the roots of your joy. What are the things that really truly fill you with joy and happiness? How do we redirect those negative thoughts into positive thoughts? How do we learn new things? We can contribute to our intellect by focusing out of ourselves onto the greater world. Let's unplug from the digital world. Perhaps connecting with others in a face-to-face type way will be really meaningful to our mind and help to restore that. So lots of ideas here for you to choose from. Which ones speak to you? Now let's take a look at the domain of body. Okay? What are things that we can do for our body that will also help our self-care and resilience? It might be exercise or daily movement of some type. It might be focusing on sleep habits and establishing some new sleep regimen. It could be stretching. It could be involving yourself in dancing. It could be massage. There are many things that you can do to help your body to function in a better way and to take care of yourself. Now let's take a look at the spiritual side of ourselves. For many people, involving themselves in religious or spiritual activities can definitely help us to feel more fulfilled. Perhaps spending time with your animals helps to renew your spirit, or tapping into the language of play. Sometimes we have to go back to our 3 or 5-year-old selves, pull out that Play-Doh and the Legos to bring us a little bit of a renewed spirit. Maybe it's being outdoors, being in nature, going for a hike, breathing in that fresh air also can help to renew your spirit. Whatever the things are that you choose to renew your spirit can be things that help your heart to feel full and content. So there's lots of different options of things that you can incorporate into your self-care plan, and all towards pointing to building resilience within your life. So whatever it is that you choose, try something that's going to be new to you specifically, unique to your personalities and your desires to help you to find purpose. Perhaps it's listening to a mindfulness podcast or turning on some music. Maybe it's following some social media influencers that are positive. Maybe it's taking part in daily affirmations to remind yourself that you are worthy and you belong and you are enough. Maybe it's just engaging in laughter, that good old-fashioned belly laughter that just fills the spirit. So whatever it is, let's make a plan. Let's make that plan, let's make it attainable, let's make it concrete, and then let's share it with others so that they can help us to hold accountable and to follow through with those activities. So how do we develop that self-care plan? Well, the first thing I encourage you to do is to take a current self-care inventory. What are you doing right now in your current life that works well, that we want to hold on to? And what are the things that aren't working well, that maybe we want to push to the wayside and replace that with something new? We also want to think about establishing a maintenance self-care plan. That means something that we're going to do as a maintenance program daily for a long period of time. But also, perhaps we might want to consider an emergency self-care plan. Something that when we are in the middle of crisis or things are really super stressful, we know those go-to people that we can share our thoughts and ideas and concerns with, or those things that we can do immediately to help give us gratification right in that moment. Whatever it is, let's put it into writing, and let's put it somewhere visible where you have that visual reminder every day of what your plan is. And then after you do this for a while, you do this self-care plan, then let's look back on it and let's assess that new commitment. How likely is it that you're going to follow through on this self-care plan? And how likely is it that you're going to be successful? So here's a few tips for success. So whatever your plan is that's unique to you, let's stick to it, okay? Get an accountability buddy. Share this idea with someone. Let them know what you're planning to do and how you want to improve your mental health and your wellness. Tell your support circle. Involve them. Invite them to be a part of it with you. Assess, reassess, and reassess again. It will need to be fine-tuned, and that's perfectly fine. Changes are a good thing as long as we're all headed in the right direction towards taking care of ourselves. And just to remember, this is not a short-term project. This is a journey and a new way of life because you are worth it. Thank you very much for being a part of this, and good luck on your self-care plan.